entire Baha'i world rejoiced at the formation of 4 new national spiritual assemblies this past Rizvan in the Soviet Union, Romania, Czechoslovakia, and the West Leeward Islands, raising the number of pillars supporting the Universal House of Justice to 155. The Hand of the Cause of God, Abdu'l-Baha, Ruhiya Khanum, represented the Universal House of Justice in Romania, an energetic Baha'i community which has grown from a mere 50 believers to well over 1,000 in just over a year. While in Romania, Ruhiya Khanum made a special visit to the grave of Queen Marie, the first monarch in the world to publicly proclaim her support for the Baha'i cause.
I think that we're all intelligent human beings, we should realize the extraordinary moral courage involved in a queen of a country that has a monarchy, and Romania was a famous, large country in Europe, declaring her faith in Baha'u'llah over her own signature.
Under her tutelage and that of Councillor Sohrab Yosefian, the convention served to deepen the knowledge and understanding of this burgeoning community as Ruhiya Khanum clarified the teachings of the faith for the largely youthful audience. The convention joyfully welcomed the return of Knight of Baha'u'llah Feridun Khazrai, who first went to Romania in response to the Guardian's call for pioneers in 1953. The National Spiritual Assembly was elected in an atmosphere of solemnity and joy. Outside the hall, teaching continued, resulting in declarations of faith by 44 new believers during the course of the proceedings. Shortly after being elected, the new National Assembly held a well-attended joint press conference with Ruhiya Khanum, where the peaceful interests of the faith were emphasized.
We add the word to our administrative bodies of spiritual, because the Baha'is are entirely non-political.
As the nascent Baha'i community continued its rapid expansion, with new believers entering the faith at a record pace and 12 local assemblies elected at Rizvan, Councillor Yosefian beckoned those assembled to even greater challenges.
Now the destiny of your country is in your hands. Doesn't depend anymore on the pioneers or tribal teachers, on the local believers. This is your country. This is your population. If you love them, if you want the real reply to their decades of suffering and troubles, you have it in your hands.
In Moscow, delegates gathered from the diverse republics of the Soviet Union, the widest geographical area of any Baha'i national community. Many of them were meeting each other for the first time at the National Convention.
I saw Baha'is from Murmansk, from Leningrad, from Odessa, from Kiev, from Kazan, from Moscow, up to a city like Yuzhno-Sakhalinsk. I saw Baha'is from southern Russia, and I realized that the Baha'i community in the Soviet Union is a model for unity.
The Universal House of Justice was represented by the Hand of the Cause of God, Ali Akbar Furatan, who had attended the university in Moscow in the 1920s. He was an active member of the Moscow Baha'i community until his expulsion from the country in 1930. The election of the National Spiritual Assembly was carried out with dignity and reverence. Many friends arose to offer gifts and spontaneous expressions of obedience and joy. Observers remarked on the striking display of oneness exhibited by the diverse body of believers drawn from such a vast area of the world.
You could feel that people were there with a feeling of love, of affection, of the fulfillment of a cherished dream, of a promise that they could never believe it will come true. So this was a very special experience.
Meanwhile, in Czechoslovakia, 110 believers from 13 countries gathered in Prague for the first Baha'i National Convention of a country often referred to as the heart of Europe. Blessed by the presence of the hand of the cause of God, Dr. Ali Muhammad Varga, the 9 delegates set an intimate atmosphere as they consulted around a small table at the front of the meeting room. In just 1 year, the handful of believers that comprise the Czech Baha'i community has undergone a remarkable transformation.
9 or 10 months ago, we were sitting together, consulting whether or not we should form a local spiritual center of Prague. And now, we all are gathered together to witness the birth of the National Spiritual Assembly of Czechoslovakia.
Those assembled were inspired by the growing signs of unity among the believers, and particularly by the prophetic message of the Universal House of Justice.
The significance of this day cannot be overestimated, and the future will reveal its consequences for the destiny of the people of this country, even Europe and the entire planet.
Afterwards, some of the delegates talked about how the convention had transformed their fears into new faith.
I was afraid because I remind a lot of elections during our old government, and now I'm very happy, and now I feel free.
I was afraid about this convention, how it will go on and so on. But now I'm very happy to be here and to see so many people, so many young and happy people from all countries, from all the world.
Across the Atlantic, a 4th pillar of the Universal House of Justice was raised amidst the scenic splendor of the Caribbean Sea. In an unusual gesture, the convention was officially opened by a special assistant to the Minister of Education, Youth and Community Affairs, who expressed his admiration for the faith.
We rely on people like you, who are also leaders in your own right, and who are also in a position to influence lives, and to touch people, and to help to channel them as well.
Some 75 believers from 11 national areas were present. The formation of the National Spiritual Assembly of the West Leeward Islands is indicative of the growth and development of the faith in the Caribbean. While the original National Assembly encompassed several distinct island groups, the birth of a series of new national assemblies now reflects more accurately the national differentiations between these groups.
You see, so you have many brothers and sisters, and these ties, these bonds between all of these islands should grow and become much stronger.
The newly formed National Spiritual Assembly received greetings and gifts from around the world. Councilors Ruth Pringle and Billy Roberts were interviewed on national television during the course of the weekend, while the Friends expressed their joy in traditional island fashion. In early April, Councilors Shanta Sundram and John Fosdar, with members of the National Spiritual Assemblies of Thailand and Malaysia, auxiliary board members, and other friends, crossed the Mekong River to join the National Spiritual Assembly of Laos for a joint meeting which would initiate a series of historic visits with the head of state of the Lao People's Democratic Republic. The president expressed particular interest in the kinds of work Baha'is are doing in the fields of education and development. He praised the Baha'i teachings and said that, in his view, they were compatible with the progress of the country. He then instructed his own office to publicize the meeting in all news media. In Honduras, an ambitious teaching project among the Garifuna people is achieving great success. Project Olinga began when a group of 4 Garifuna Baha'is and 1 pioneer began daily teaching activities in one town.
This is really the way we do it. When you're talking about mass teaching, this is our approach to mass teaching. And since we have a permanent team here, the permanent team will come back and start a study class in their home. They'll have classes for the children, which the children can go to. And so we immediately incorporate the consolidation aspect.
Over 500 souls entered the faith in the first 3 weeks. The group responded by organizing teacher training institutes so the new believers could themselves learn how to share the Baha'i teachings with others. These newly trained indigenous believers then spread out to teach in villages throughout the area. Team members developed a rotating schedule, revisiting each village on the same 2 days every week, conducting study classes for the mothers and children, and teaching new seekers as they went along.
Oh Dios, guíame, protégeme, ilumina la lámpara de mi corazón y haz de mí.
When the project officially ended in December, there were over 10,000 new Baha'is, more than 80 ongoing adult home study classes, and 50 new children's classes. Since that time, the number of new believers has increased to 16,000, and the National Assembly has set a goal of 30,000 new believers by April 1992. The Baha'i teaching suggests that there is a spiritual connection between success and sacrifice. The Baha'is in Iran have suffered successive waves of persecution since the earliest days of the faith. The latest surge of repression began with the rise of Islamic fundamentalism in 1979, leading to the arrest, torture, and imprisonment of hundreds of Baha'is, the execution of 2 successive national spiritual assemblies, together with scores of individual believers, the confiscation, destruction, and desecration of holy places, homes, and Baha'i centers, and ultimately to a ban upon all Baha'i institutions and community activities. The integrity, bravery, and steadfastness of the Iranian Baha'is attracted worldwide notice, drawing attention to the peaceful, non-political character of the faith. Governments around the globe condemned the persecutions, mobilizing world public opinion in defense of the helpless Baha'i community in Iran. As the physical violence gradually subsided, the direction of these efforts broadened beyond the initial urgency to stop killing and torture, to center on the restoration of all human rights, the liberation of the Baha'i community from the shackles of religious intolerance in the land of its birth. On May 22nd, the eve of the anniversary of the Declaration of the Bab, members of the United States Congress, in a bipartisan effort, introduced a new resolution calling for the full emancipation of the Iranian Baha'i community.
This is perhaps in the world the most pure example of religious intolerance, and it's one that the world, including the United States, ought to address as strongly as possible.
This resolution makes clear that Congress continues to be deeply concerned about Iran's human rights practices, especially its denial of rights to members of the Baha'i community, Iran's largest religious minority.
There are over 100,000 members of the Baha'i religious group living in America. And it's a worldwide religion. It's not just a sect in Iran. It's a worldwide religion that has people from throughout the world who are deeply concerned about the Baha'i oppression in Iran.
Therefore, my colleagues and I believe that this is the right year to recognize positive developments in Iran as regards the Baha'i, but also to say that ultimately the goal should be for Iran to emancipate the Baha'i community and to recognize their humanity and their legitimacy.
We're fully aware of the fact that they are being denied their basic rights to practice a religion which seeks no advantage over anyone else in their country, but merely the freedom to be able to worship God in their own way. And we are going to insist in the months and years ahead, as tensions may ease between our two countries, that any stabilization between the United States and Iran will have to include, must include, a fair and better treatment of the Baha'i.
We feel this is the most vital and challenging issue confronting American citizens, not just the Baha'is, but the entire populace of this country. Until we solve this problem, our writings say, there will be no unity.
In 1912, Abdu'l-Baha united Louis Gregory and Louisa Matthews in an interracial marriage and participated in the annual conference of the newly formed National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, setting the American community on a long and difficult path towards racial unity. In 1938, Shoghi Effendi, in a definitive analysis of the subject, asserted that the achievement of unity between the black and white races is the most challenging issue facing the American Baha'i community. Throughout the ensuing half-century, the Baha'i community has struggled unceasingly to build integrated communities and to rid itself of every kind of prejudice. Meanwhile, the civil rights movement produced sweeping legal reforms and spawned a season of hope. Yet, after more than 3 decades of intense social and political struggle, the underlying relationships between black and white in America seem little changed. At this unsettled juncture, the National Spiritual Assembly of the United States has issued a major statement addressed to the entire American nation.
We felt that the serious disease in the United States of racism had to be dealt with in an open way. We felt that we needed to make a statement to all the people of the United States, not just whites, not just blacks, but to all the people of the United States.
The impact of the statement, with its resounding affirmation of the oneness of mankind, is buttressed by the example of Baha'i communities throughout the land.
About 50 members of the Baha'i faith marched down Main Street. They walked from the state capitol to Sydney Park. Organizers say many blacks and whites may work together, but they don't socialize together, and that can cause problems.
We think it's important that people have a sense and a vision and some kind of hope that race unity can actually take place. So we thought that by having some kind of a gathering like this in the community, bringing the races together, it gives a sense of vision to maybe cut through some of the tension that's out there.
The Association for Baha'i Studies sponsored a major conference to explore models of racial unity.
We cannot have any effective model within the Baha'i community unless we are very genuine about love and fellowship, unless we are extremely patient with one another. And what we have to do is deepen in the teachings of Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha and Shoghi Effendi. And what that will do, if you're black Baha'i, what it will do is that it will keep you from becoming frustrated. Those who are white Baha'is are going to have to understand that they can speed up the pace of social change in the larger society, and they can help to validate and legitimize the model of the Baha'i community as a model for racial unity if they work on their racial attitudes.
Seminars and institutes, race unity walks, parades, picnics, and public meetings are some of the ways in which local Baha'i communities are working to demonstrate the vision of race unity in action as they weave their own increasingly distinctive pattern of unity within the fabric of American society.
We want each and every Baha'i in this country to make sure that every neighbor, every relative, every passerby on the street, every person that they work with or go to school with, not only receive it, but read its contents and discuss it with them. We feel that it is such a powerful statement that it can transform people's lives.
We are sisters and brothers, a coat of many colors, you and me.
The Baha'i world community, now in the 4th epoch of its formative age, has progressed and developed through a series of global plans of varying duration. For the American Baha'i community, the hand of the cause of God, William Sears, has provided vital inspiration and leadership to every plan since the passing of Shoghi Effendi. No American Baha'i can remain unaware of the impact of his efforts in the 9-year plan, the 5-year plan, the 7-year plan, in raising up the first Baha'i radio station in North America, in launching the 6-year plan, and most recently through his sacrificial efforts to help raise the $50 million reserve fund needed to initiate construction on the Ark and Terraces project on Mount Carmel.
And we've told the National Assembly to use this volume of the Dawnbreakers with the Guardian's precious signature in whatever way they feel will be most effective.
Friends, he offered this, for it was the last remaining valuable possession he had, as a symbol of his love and devotion for this faith.
In every plan, the American community has fallen behind. In every plan, he has rallied it to victory in the end. As the 6-year plan enters its final months, with many goals still to be achieved, the National Spiritual Assembly, accompanied by Councilor Fred Schechter and members of the National Teaching Committee and friends, took time to pay a special visit to Mr. Sears in Tucson, Arizona, to express their deep sense of gratitude for all that he has given to this community.
It's impossible for us to tell you what's in our hearts about you and Marguerite and what you have done. Always you have, as a standard bearer, planted the standard, and always thus far we have rallied round it. And it is our pledge, and we're all here to attest to that, that this time will be the same.
The appreciation was conveyed in the form of a scroll carrying more than 10,000 names of believers in America who had contributed to the fund which helped to meet the needs of the Universal House of Justice for the Ark project.
The scroll, we kiddingly refer to this as the electronic scroll because it's a printout which would go from here to Phoenix if we unwrapped it.
Right, yes.
There are more than 10,000 names
how wonderful.
On this,
yes.
On this scroll, and of course they will be sealed with your sacrificial gift. And as soon as the $24 million was announced by the House of Justice to be in hand, we wanted to have you seal this scroll and put it in its receptacle.
I got that, and you know that telegram came. We didn't know anything about this. But that beautiful telegram from the NSA, I had two thoughts. The first time I looked at it, I thought, my God, they think I've died and gone to Abha Kingdom. I mean, it was so beautiful and so wonderful. And then I thought, what did I do? I couldn't think of anything. And then the phone call came about the book, and it was a great thrill to us, really. Could I say something?
Though frail and in ill health, Mr. Sears committed himself to work actively toward the large-scale expansion of the cause in the closing year of the 6-year plan, announcing his intention to travel to the most promising areas across the country to personally reinforce the teaching work and to greet the new believers. On June 17, 1991, contracts were signed for the second phase of construction of the terraces to the Shrine of the Bab. Work began immediately at 4 different locations on the mountain. In preparation for the work, an ancient olive grove near the Shrine of the Bab was removed and relocated near the obelisk, which marks the site of a future house of worship. Ornaments placed in the gardens under the direction of Shoghi Effendi were removed for safekeeping and restoration. Meanwhile, workers made preparations to begin excavating the estimated 10,000 truckloads of rock that will be removed and relocated in order to reshape the face of Mount Carmel into the 19 terraces of the Shrine of the Bab. On June 18th, the hand of the cause of God, John Robards, passed away peacefully in Rodden, Quebec. The Baha'is of Canada, together with legions of his friends and admirers from throughout the world, remember him with love and admiration.
said that we must teach, we must propagate and protect the faith, and we must diffuse the divine fragrances. See, Audrey and I lived for 13 years among the Africans, and now to be actually back among them was a joy to our hearts that I can't begin to tell you. And it was just such a joy to meet all those black people again. We love them so much. I have taught a lot about prayer, and I don't see how anybody can live without it, without a great deal of it. It's the very breath of life itself. You see, if we pray more, we become more loving, more just, more outstanding in every way. It's like if you take an iron bar and put it in the fire, it will become red. It'll be red hot, won't it? It'll be hot and bright, and it takes on the qualities of the fire when it's in that fire. And that is the way we take on the attributes of God when we pray. We turn to God. We are in His presence. And so, the more we pray, the better people we become.